Alright, we're going to continue talking about Karl Barth's Church Dogmatics. This is video log number 5 for me. And we're talking from pages 145 until 195. So 50 pages, and really a good 50 pages to read in there. Probably too much to talk about maybe in one video, but if you're looking for one part to read, boy, that's a good part. So section is called The Eternal Will of God in the Election of Jesus Christ. So just a reminder, anybody dropping in, unfortunately, to watch these boring videos, it's basically my own personal tool for keeping track of where I've gone and what I've thought about these 500 pages of reading as I go. So apologies to you if you have no idea what I'm talking about. And with that, there should be just me left watching this video now, I think. So here we go. Okay, what I found really interesting through this whole thing is Barth's struggle as he's kind of making this innovation in the doctrine of election. And he really understands, I think, the magnitude of what he's doing. And he refers to it 3 times, I think, page 147, 154, and 156, where he calls it an innovation or a deviation from the doctrine as it's been handed down to him at that point. He says on 147 here, "It is one of the great puzzles of history that the step which we are now taking towards a true form of the electing God and elected man was not taken long ago, although, as we have seen, many thinkers did come near enough to taking it." So when I look back and see his interaction with all the other theologians of the past, I get the sense that he's been looking for someone who has thought the way he's thinking before, and he's really shocked to find, after all that research, that people have at one time or another come kind of close to it, but then it's never taken root and it's never kind of grown into its full form that he's trying to expound. So what is it? What is it? What's the innovation? The innovation that he's doing is he's replacing this absolute decree of God as free and powerful, and God's before time determination of the election or double predestination of man. He's replacing that with the person of Jesus Christ. So he's replacing the decree with a person, and I think that's really the fundamental deviation, or the innovation as he calls it. So why is he doing this? He says on 148 here, he's talking about other theologians and why they came to the conclusions that they came to, and why he's now coming to something very different. He says the reasons why they did and could posit this obscurity, and the counter reasons why we can no longer do so, must lie very deep. And they are not to be found, or at any rate not to be found decisively, merely in the fact that they, on the one hand, were committed to a definite scheme of thought, which did not derive from the Bible, but with the help of which they read their Bibles, while we, on the other hand, have now freed ourselves from this schema. What he's saying, and I can't entirely agree with him here, is that people have been influenced by the thoughts of their culture and their upbringing and their experience, and have read the Bible in the light of that. And he's saying that he has now freed himself from this, that he is now reading the Bible the way the Bible should be read, and interpreting it in the way that it calls itself to be read, not in the way that his culture is informing him to interpret it. And I'm not sure if that's a claim that anyone can make. We're all a product of our environment and our experiences, and at the same time, I have to give room for the fact that the Bible is trying to communicate a truthful message, and that sometimes comes across more clearly, more truthfully to one person than another. So I think we have to leave room for the fact that Barth is making a valid innovation, as he says. Whether or not that he can say he's freed himself from the schema of allowing his interpretation of the Bible to be conditioned by the place which he stands in the history of humanity. I don't think that's valid. Okay. 149 here, he talks about, and there's a couple of passages in these 50 pages which really throw you for a loop, and you wish he'd say more, but he doesn't. He says, temporal man is elected by God. Ishmael and Esau, Pharaoh too, and Saul and Cyrus, even Judas Iscariot, and the heathen both far and near, all these are elected. At least potentially. He says, at least potentially. At least as witnesses to God's electing and man's election. Even in their own way, even the reprobate and those whom God merely uses are elected. Even those God merely uses. That's the mystery of this whole thing. Even the person who lives outside of the knowledge of God, whose life goes backwards and horribly, even this person is elected, whom God has used. And then he goes on. Doesn't say a whole lot more. All right. Okay. What I find really, I think I mentioned this in one of the video logs before, but Barth has this way of interacting with the other theologians, which is very honorable. Like I written, like how honorable here in the margin of the book on page 151. And he says, like, he's going to disagree with these guys. He doesn't think they went the right way, but he says of these old theologians, we must still ask whether they did apply themselves to these passages of the Bible he's talking about as constantly and continuously as they should have done, whether they were always faithful to their own insights, as we should expect in this matter of predestination. And while we cannot be sufficiently grateful for the insights or pay sufficient attention to them, yet we must still answer these questions in the negative. I think that's a good way to disagree with somebody, saying that, you know, they may have made some errors, but we can't be sufficiently grateful or pay sufficient attention to the work that they have done. In the same way that he wants someone to pay attention and to be grateful for the work that he's done. I think, man, if we would deal with each other in that way, we'd have a lot less problems with disunity in the Christian church. If people would just take each other seriously. Because you hear some pretty awful things about how people refer to other people's writings once in a while. I'm like, man, oh man. Whatever you have to say about God is pretty well undermined by how you treat your neighbor. And that makes me want to take Barth seriously. Like when I see in the fruit of someone's life, as close as I can get to it from his readings, that he is honoring people that he thinks have gone right and have gone wrong. He honors them and he honors their work. And that just shows that he actually does love these guys. Not that he ever didn't forcefully disagree with somebody. Just read the intro to Romans, the prelude to Romans, and there's a few zingers in there too, so it's not perfect. I'm not trying to say that. All right. So what he thinks people have done in the past is when they go to talk about pre-temporal eternity. Can you even say that? Pre-temporal eternity. Where are we at time-wise? 9 minutes already. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to do 2 videos. Okay, so pre-temporal eternity. That's where people have stopped thinking about Jesus Christ. He says, is it that when we come to pre-temporal eternity, the sphere of predestination, because that's where predestination happens, that which was in the beginning with God, we are suddenly to think of these things apart from Jesus Christ, something which quite rightly we are not allowed to do when we deal with supratemporal or post-temporal eternity, with what is and what will be. See, we're pretty good as evangelical Christians of thinking about Jesus or the Spirit of God in the now and in the future, but it seems that we haven't done a good job of thinking of Jesus Christ in exactly the same way in the past, and not just our past, but he's talking about pre-temporal eternity, before the beginning of time. And he's saying that's why 154. Going back to the innovation part, okay? Yeah, this is really interesting. So how do we know? He's going one way, and others have gone another. And he says, in arriving at a different decision, we do not believe that we are doing anything out of the ordinary, but something obvious and straightforward. We believe, in fact, that we are doing the only possible thing, in accordance with the method with which these theologians were conversant in other matters. So he's just doing the same thing. He's applying the same rigorous line of thought that what we know about this and that and this and that, we know from what God has revealed to us in the person of Jesus Christ. He's just applying that backwards like they have so well done in the present and in the future, and what he feels that they haven't done so well. Oh yeah, and okay, but where is it? Man, come on. Departure, yeah, absolute supreme. No, okay. Shoot, I can't find it now, and I'm wasting my time, so let me just try to remember it. He says it would be equally invalid to posit, okay, so instead of God choosing the two columns that we've been talking about, the column of those elected and the column of those rejected, he's saying all are elect in Jesus Christ, and the reject is Jesus Christ. He's put that rejection on himself. He said, so this is the gospel. This is actually the election which the gospel is trying to tell us about, and that's why it's gospel, because it's good news for everyone, not this mystery of this darkness and obscurity of this, who knows why God decided to do it that way. Oh, well, he's a good God in the end, and that's all we have to say. He's saying it would be equally invalid for him to come to the conclusion that he's come to if he's just applying the same line of thinking that the other guys did, that there are some things we just know about God. And he says right at the very end, I need to expand on that a bit more. So he's saying they ascribed freedom and this arbitrary love of God to these two columns of people in humanity. And he's saying, no, God is not like that. God has elected all. There's only one column from which your name can be blotted out. And the reject, if we're going to talk about the reject, we have to talk about it as the rejection which God took upon himself in the person that was rightly ours, and he took upon himself in the person of Jesus Christ. Now, he's saying one conclusion is different and one conclusion is different from the other one. Both of them are invalid if we arrive at them by thinking that we know anything about God outside of Jesus Christ. And so he says right at the very end, it's not a matter of optimism. This is not an let's think optimistically about the situation or reform the situation in a way that's to our advantage more. He's not saying that at all. What he's saying is this is a matter of obedience. This is what we have to think about God, because this is how God has revealed himself in Jesus Christ. And it's a matter of pure joy, not a matter of part joy and part fear. Yes. I like it. I like it. So, 14 minutes. We'll pick it up round 2 with number 6.